Millions of families bring home a second dog every year with the best intentions, and within weeks, they're Googling rehome a dog at 2 in the morning. It doesn't happen because the dogs were incompatible. It happens because of a chain reaction that starts in the first 60 seconds, and nobody told them what was actually going on. Stay with me, because what I'm going to show you about what's happening in your dog's brain during that first meeting will completely change how you handle this. Here's the truth nobody leads with. The failure rate for second dog introductions is staggering. Rehoming within the first year remains one of the most common outcomes when families add a second dog. And in almost every case, the owners blame themselves, blame the dogs, or blame bad luck. But behavioral science points to something much more specific. Almost every failed introduction traces back to the same handful of mistakes, all of them made before the dogs have been together for even a minute. The core problem is a mismatch. You are wired to want a visual, emotional, immediate connection. You want to see tails wagging, noses touching, instant friendship. That instinct makes complete sense for a human. But your dog is wired for something completely different. Dogs process social information gradually, through scent, through space, through time. The way you intuitively think an introduction should look is almost the exact opposite of what your dog's brain actually needs. And that gap is where everything falls apart. So let's start at the beginning. Most introductions fail in the first 60 seconds, and the first error is location. When you bring a new dog into your resident dog's home, that space is saturated with scent markers. Every corner, every piece of furniture, every inch of that room says, "Mine." Introducing a stranger there isn't a neutral meeting. It's an intrusion into marked territory. Research on territorial behavior consistently shows resident dogs are significantly more aggressive on their own turf than in a neutral location. The second error happens right after. Both dogs are brought face to face. It feels natural. You want them to say hello. But in canine social grammar, a direct frontal approach is a challenge signal, not a greeting. Dogs in relaxed social settings approach in curves. They sniff rear ends. They look away to say, "I'm not a threat." A head-on introduction, especially on tight leashes that prevent any natural arc, reads as confrontation. Your dog isn't being dramatic. It's reading the situation accurately. If your dog's well-being is worth more than surface-level tips, Griffin's Pack covers the science behind behavior every week. Hit subscribe so you never miss it. And then there's the leash itself. A tight leash isn't just physically restrictive. It communicates something to your dog through your own body. Tension travels down the lead. Your dog feels you tighten up and reads that as confirmation that something threatening is happening. On top of that, the leash physically prevents your dog from performing the very signals it uses to say, "I'm not a threat." The curved approach, the head turn, the slow sniff. You've removed its entire de-escalation toolkit without realizing it. Here's what most owners don't know about that first bad meeting. Cortisol, the stress hormone, can remain elevated in a dog's system for 48 to 72 hours after a stressful encounter. That means a single botched introduction doesn't just create a bad moment. It chemically impairs the relationship before it has any real chance to form. Your dog goes into every interaction that follows with a compromised baseline, already primed for threat detection. One bad first impression can poison days of subsequent meetings before you've even tried again. So what does science say should happen instead? It starts before the dogs ever see each other. Your dog's nose contains roughly 300 million scent receptors. Humans have about 6 million, and approximately 40% of a dog's brain is dedicated to analyzing scent. That isn't just a fun fact, it's a design spec. Dogs are built to gather social information through smell first and everything else second. The actual introduction should begin days before any visual contact happens, through scent alone. Dogs also have a structure called the vomeronasal organ, sometimes called Jacobson's organ, located in the roof of the mouth. It processes pheromones independently from the main olfactory system. That means your dog is running two parallel scent analysis channels at once during any sniff greeting. These chemical signals communicate age, health, emotional state, reproductive status, and social confidence in a level of detail no visual interaction could ever match. When your dog sniffs a stranger's bedding, it's not curious. It's reading a full social profile. This is why scent swapping is not just a tip. It's biology. You take a cloth or piece of bedding from the new dog and let your resident dog investigate it in a calm, low-pressure setting. Then you do the same in reverse. No pressure, no forced proximity, no reaction to manage, just information. A dog that has already processed the incoming dog's scent profile arrives at the first visual meeting with existing context instead of facing a completely unknown stimulus. Research suggests this pre-exposure can meaningfully reduce the novelty-driven arousal spike. Now we get to the gold standard of first visual meetings, the parallel walk. Two dogs moving in the same direction, 15 to 30 feet apart, in a neutral outdoor location. It works for several converging reasons. Forward movement channels energy into a shared activity rather than a face-to-face confrontation. Behavioral research calls this behavioral synchrony, matched movement patterns that social animals use to signal affiliation and reduce perceived threat. Even two strangers walking in the same direction are quietly telling each other, "I'm not here to fight." The distance in a parallel walk isn't arbitrary. At 15 to 30 feet, most dogs can perceive the other dog without crossing their arousal threshold, the point where they can no longer process information calmly. Once a dog exceeds that threshold, classical conditioning essentially stops working. Every minute your dog spends over threshold during an introduction is counterproductive. It's not neutral, it's actively building a negative association. The parallel walk keeps both dogs below that line, in a trainable headspace, getting rewarded for staying calm while the other dog exists nearby. But parallel walking has one important limitation worth knowing. It assumes both dogs can be in the same visual field without going over threshold. For dogs with significant leash reactivity or fear-based responses, even the sight of another dog at 30 feet can trigger a stress cascade. For these dogs, the scent-only phase may need to extend for days or even weeks before any visual exposure is appropriate. Know your dog. A dog that already struggles with other dogs on walks needs a slower, more conservative path to introduction, and that's completely okay. Have you ever introduced a second dog to your household? Tell me what happened in the comments. Did it go smoothly, or did things go sideways fast? I read every single comment. Now here's the part that catches almost everyone off guard. Even when the outdoor introduction goes perfectly, things can fall apart the moment the new dog crosses your threshold at home. And it's almost never about food. Resource guarding is a natural, evolutionarily adaptive behavior. Dogs guard things they value, and that list is much longer than most owners realize. It includes resting spots, doorways, furniture positions, toys, and most critically, your attention. Your proximity to the resident dog is a resource, a powerful one. Research shows that owner attention is one of the most underestimated guarded resources in single-dog households. A dog that has had exclusive access to you for years isn't being possessive out of bad character. It's responding to a real shift in resource availability. The new dog walking between you and your resident dog, with no food anywhere in sight, can trigger a guarding response because that spatial position carries social weight. Science-backed protocols address this directly. Rotate one-on-one attention with each dog so the resident dog doesn't associate the newcomer with a loss of affection. The practical home management protocol is straightforward. Remove high-value items during the first 2 to 4 weeks. No food bowls in shared spaces. Feed each dog in completely separate rooms with the door closed. Provide multiple resting spots at similar heights in different areas so neither dog has to compete for comfort. Research on resource guarding shows something counterintuitive. Providing abundant, predictable access to valued resources actually reduces guarding behavior over time. Scarcity triggers guarding, abundance diffuses it. Structure the environment and you change the behavior. Now let's talk about the signals most owners miss entirely. By the time growling or snapping happens, the dogs have been communicating stress for minutes. The science of canine body language identifies a hierarchy that starts with subtle appeasement signals: yawning, lip licking, head turns, sniffing the ground. These say, "I'm uncomfortable. Please slow down." Most owners scan right past them. Then comes the second tier: whale eye, clamped mouth, stiff body, ears pinned, tail held low or rigidly high. That's your last warning before things escalate. Here's what that means in practice. Growling is not the beginning of aggression. It's the end of a long communication chain that got ignored. Every step before the growl was a request to slow down, and those requests went unanswered. Research shows owners who have received formal body language training intervene during stress responses at 3 to 4 times the rate of untrained owners. That knowledge gap is directly causing introductions to fail. And there's something even more dangerous than missing these signals. It's punishing the growl when you finally notice it. Suppressing growling through punishment is one of the most dangerous mistakes documented in veterinary behavioral research. It removes the warning signal without removing the underlying emotional state. The dog has learned it can't growl, so it skips straight to biting, with no prior signal. This is how dogs with previously no warning bite histories are created. The dog was warning every time. The owner just took away its ability to do so. If your dog growls during an introduction, your response should be to increase distance, not to correct the growl. There's one dimension of introductions that almost no popular content touches: the hormonal factor. The sex and hormonal status of each dog significantly shapes the likelihood of conflict, and most owners never consider it. Research on interdog aggression consistently shows that same-sex pairs, especially 2 intact males or 2 intact females, carry the highest conflict risk. But here's what surprises most people. Female-female aggression tends to be more severe and less predictable than male-male aggression. It often escalates with age and reproductive cycling, and it receives almost no attention in popular dog content. Spay and neuter status complicates this further. A study published in PLOS One found that early spaying and neutering has complex behavioral effects, with some evidence suggesting altered hormone profiles can affect social confidence and reactivity. Dogs spayed or neutered before full social maturity, which occurs between 18 and 24 months, may not have developed the complete hormonal context that shapes adult social signaling. The practical implication? Timing matters. Introducing a new dog during a resident female's heat cycle is strongly contraindicated. Hormonal peaks create unpredictable social chemistry. Now for the timeline reality, and this might be the most important thing in this entire video. Social media and casual advice create an impression that dogs should be friends within days. Owners who don't see immediate warmth often interpret it as evidence the dogs just don't get along. Behavioral science shows something dramatically different. Meaningful affiliative relationships between unfamiliar adult dogs typically take weeks to months to stabilize, not hours or days. A landmark study on social bond formation found that consistent proximity, not playful interaction, is the primary driver of relationship development between dogs. Here's the protocol timeline that behavioral science actually supports. Days 1 through 7. Scent introduction only. No visual contact. Exchange bedding. Let both dogs process. Days 7 through 14. Neutral territory parallel walks. Multiple sessions. Gradual distance reduction. Weeks 2 through 6. Managed home integration. Separate feeding, separate sleeping, baby gates, supervised shared time with attention to body language. Full unsupervised cohabitation only after you've seen consistently calm, relaxed body language during proximity. For adult dogs with no prior behavior concerns, that minimum is often 6 to 8 weeks, not days. One more thing the research gets specific about. Play between newly introduced dogs is often a sign of high arousal, not necessarily positive relationship quality. Overstimulated play can actually escalate into conflict, especially in the early weeks before social rules have been negotiated. Owners who measure success by play behavior are more likely to experience eventual conflict than owners who measure success by calm, relaxed body language during proximity. Play is not the goal. Relaxed coexistence is. Two dogs lying on opposite sides of a room, ignoring each other, completely calm? That's winning. Almost every bad pairing that ends in rehoming was not actually a bad pairing. It was a good pairing with a catastrophically flawed introduction. The science of canine social cognition shows that first impressions are disproportionately sticky in dogs, negative ones especially. Stress hormones from a single bad meeting can impair relationship formation for weeks. The owners who successfully build two-dog households don't do it through patience alone. They do it by understanding what their dog's nervous system actually needs at each stage. That knowledge is what changes the outcome. Griffin's Pack publishes videos like this every week, the stuff about your dog's behavior and health that most owners never hear. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Here's what you can do right now. If you're planning to bring a second dog home, start the scent swap this week, before you even bring the dog over. Get a cloth from the new dog, let your resident dog investigate it in a calm setting, and repeat it daily. If you've already had a rough introduction, don't give up. Increase distance, remove pressure, go back to scent swapping, and slow the timeline down. The protocol works, but only if you give it the time the biology actually requires. Tell me in the comments, do you have a second dog? And how did that first introduction actually go? I want to hear the real stories, not just the highlights. And if this helped you understand your dog a little better today, subscribe to Griffin's Pack. We're here every week with the science-backed side of dog ownership that your dog deserves you to know.